Up, Nate?
Hey, how are you?
Doing, buddy?
I'm good. All right, so we got a ton to talk about here with all the current events relating to the Olympia. So let's start out. I think everybody will want to know your opinion of this, given your 10 years of battling the guy. Flex Lewis has to drop out, which says a lot coming from him. He's certainly not a guy that's known to quit on things. So him pulling out after a year and a half of hype for this show seems like it's pretty serious. So what are your thoughts on that, on just him pulling out when he did, essentially like what, 9-10 weeks out, and his reasoning for it, the injury?
Well, this is certainly the first time I've ever heard of Flex pulling out.
How many kids does he have?
Only one beautiful one. Sorry about the breakfast. This is amazing. I got egg whites, eggs over easy, steak, cream of rice, coffee, apple juice. I'm all set up, ready for you.
You're taking after Guy's sister Nino. I've never seen him on a podcast not eating a meal.
Yeah, and he's still 160 pounds. What's wrong with him? Anyway, back to Flex. My man, I love him. Whatever it is, we don't know that. We haven't pinpointed it yet. I know that through the years, he had a bad knee. So bad, in fact, and he never told anyone that he had to get that like corkscrew where they go into his hip and take out some bone marrow from his hip. Then they put it in a machine and spin it around and then inject it into the knee. I know there's a name for that process. But
is it PRP?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're aware, Jose, he came out with a second video maybe yesterday and explaining the reasons. So the first one was like, I'm out, I have an injury, I'll talk about it later. And the second video, I think, came out yesterday morning, where he said it was his shoulders. So he basically said that over the last, like, they've been bothering for a while, as they do for you, anybody that's been, lifting heavy weight for as long as you guys have. But he said, I think over the last year, he's been getting cortisone shots, which is against his better judgment because you're masking everything, right? You're not fixing anything. And he'd get a shot, he could train his ass off, but he knows he's causing some damage. It would wear off, the pain would hit, go for another shot. And the shots were lasting less and less, right? Like, it's like that first shot, good for 5 months, then 4 months, then 3 months. Now it's not doing anything. And he's in so much pain. So he knows they said there's minor tears in his shoulder, not enough to warrant surgery on it immediately, but he's in that direction. If he just kept tumbling away, he'd have to have surgery. So what he's doing is, says he has the 2 doctors from the Miami Dolphins he's working with, as well as he's flying to Colombia to do stem cell treatments on his shoulders. He's spoken to a lot of athletes. I think Joe Rogan, a lot of people have gone that route of stem cell treatments, and they say, after getting it done, they got a brand new shoulder without any surgery. Things just heal themselves. So he's planning on flying to Colombia for that. So that's the newest update.
Wow. That's awesome. It certainly leaves a big hole in the Olympia. He's got one of the biggest fan bases in the world. I certainly was excited to see him on stage with these guys. He, in my mind, he could win the damn thing. When all things are considered, yeah, he would be bigger than we've ever seen him, but he'd also have that trademark conditioning, trademark presentation. And when all things are considered, he can certainly, if everyone else is off, he could beat them. Why not?
Yep.
He would have an uphill battle just because he's shorter, he's lighter, but he's missing nothing. His physique is as complete as anyone. And then I've said it before, only Phil can match his condition. where it's like cartoon condition. So yeah, it's very sad. I wish him the best. I haven't had a chance. We briefly text back and forth, but we didn't get into anything specific. I never do. You know, I consider him a very close friend, and when the entire world is asking you about that, that's the last thing I want to talk to him about. You know, I just let him know I'm thinking of him, and I hope he's okay, and to get back to me when he's ready. He's got, seriously, I think he said he had 180 text messages that he didn't even open yet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's going to be better. He's still only 36 years old.
That's,
you know,
crazy. Yeah.
I've said it a million times, but I did my first pro show at 34. So I just started getting going at 36. So he's got plenty of time left if he can stay healthy and stay strong and fix up those shoulders. And he's got plenty of time.
That's one of the things he talked about in that second video is, you know, he's never been a guy that's followed the path of traditional bodybuilders, hence the sponsors that he's gotten, Monster. He's not on every YouTube channel every week. You know, you said you've known him. He's he controls everything, all the variables, and his message gets out the way that he wants to. And so he mentioned that, you know, he's not been a guy that's followed the typical path, which the typical bodybuilder would say, I've already committed to this show. My fans want to see me there. My sponsors want to see me there. Let's just push through it. But as he, you know, he mentioned, that's the stuff that takes years off your career. And so that's why he's putting the brakes right now. Says he's going to clean out his system, get the stem cells in his shoulders, do all of the right rehab so that he does have years more to keep pushing, versus the shoulders. Like in your case, you know, the hips were the issue, right? Like you pushed as long as you could until the wheels fell off, and then you had to get the hip replacement.
Literally.
Yeah. So it's as disappointing as it is. You hope that gives him a couple more years of competing, because you know, he really had the what do you call it? You know, the lock on the speedometer for a long time, you know, of limiting his growth. And we haven't seen his full potential, I don't think. You know, he comes in, let's say 10 pounds bigger in the same condition. We don't really know what that would look like, you know?
Right. Every year he would let one go. And it would sneak out. It would be leaked. A photo of him at like 5 weeks out at 225, peeled, and clearly a lot rounder and fuller. And that's more, you know, that kind of gave you the idea of what he could look like.
Yep.
I mean, he did get better every year, and his last year in 18 was earth-shattering 212. You know, there was nobody remotely close. That was the year Derek was second, and Derek looked every bit of a 24-year-old kid next to a man. You know, nothing against Derek. That's just how good Flex was that day. So yeah, he can be.
Well, we've incredible. Seen with Bonac and now Hadi, right? So there's some precedent of these guys stepping up, and I think Flex has way better shape, way better just muscle build. Obviously, Hadi's a total freak, but I like Flex's physique better. We're talking hypothetical, but I think Flex, you know, with smart as he is, doing things the right way, could beat Hadi. And just
he already has.
Yep. In the past, and I think he can beat Bonac, just having a slightly better. You know, Bonac's kind of maxed out, and now he has to worry about the stomach. We haven't really seen that with Flex.
No.
You know, so much where there's the stomach concern, because Bonac has such a short torso. It's got nowhere left to go but his torso.
Right. Yeah. Back in 2017, Flex and I, or I should say Hadi and I, stood on either side of Flex at the Korea Grand Prix. And if you just go by photos, shit, both Hadi and I could have beat him, going by photos. But what Flex has going for him is his, I said earlier, his presentation and the way he can bamboozle you into only looking at him. When there's a monster of Hadi, you know, who is peeled, big, you know, when you break it down, it's hard to take it away from the champ. You know, he was convincing enough to beat a wild looking Hadi. And I, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if that exact same thing happened again, because his tie-ins, his shape, the way he moves, transitions from pose to pose, and Flex actually did a post about that a few weeks after the show, because everyone was like, look at these pictures, look at these pictures. And all you would catch was the peak of the front double bicep. You wouldn't catch in between when they're switching in between poses. So Flex put out a post of a series of transitions where he looked nuts. Yeah. And he was like, you know, don't be fooled by all the photos. You can't judge everything on Instagram, you know? And he had a great point by that.
Right, that moment where he's doing the perfect transition, stomach's tight, body's relaxing, and his stomach pops out.
Right,
that's still being judged.
Exactly, and that the judges are watching you from the moment you walk on stage to the moment you walk off. And Flex has always been good at maintaining his composure the entire time, even if he's distracting you by wiping sweat off and, you know, he's smart, man. He knows how to pretend. He'll look around and be like, oh, you're stepping over the line. And he's making the judges look away from him while he takes a breath, you know?
Yeah, right.
He's just smarter than everyone else. You can't fault him for that. So anyway, the bigger story, or not bigger, but the big story that came out of this is the fact that now Ramy, Big Ramy, gets an invite pretty much because Flex is gone.
Yeah.
You know, or the timing would suggest that, you know, Flex is gone. We need another big name. They probably would have invited him anyway.
I think so, yeah.
So there's a lot of debate, argument going on. I just watched Dave Palumbo have on Ian Valliere and Patrick Moore and Milos debating it. You know, there's definitely two schools of thought there. As an athlete, I'd be like, dude, what the fuck? You know, I did 4 shows this year trying to qualify. Ramy didn't do 1. You know, I can understand that. It cost me God knows how much to go to these shows and compete, and he didn't even have to do it. And really, this is the second year in a row that he has kind of pulled this and, you know, asked for an invite. So as a competitor, I would feel a little slighted, especially if I was on the bubble, one of those guys who should be possibly getting in on points and didn't.
Yeah, he was. Ramy was tied with On for points, so they have the same amount of points.
Yeah.
So if you're on, and you know, I think it was on Dave with Ian and Patrick brought up. How about the guys that busted their ass, like Sergio, who flew to Australia to compete?
Right.
Sergio's just missing a couple points. So he flew out there to do a show. He's out there, it gets canceled. You know, Sergio, if he wouldn't have won that show, certainly would have got enough points that would have put him ahead of Ramy. You know, so you have all these hypotheticals that are also COVID related, for sure. I think the biggest thing is, you know, from the promoter standpoint, is Ramy will sell pay-per-views. You know, it's a whole other part of the world that if Ramy's not in it, you know, who's to say if Hadi will be in it? I know they're obviously leaking photos and he's planning on being in it, but that's, you know, whether he makes it here. You have the whole Middle East that could be buying pay-per-views because of Hadi, because of Ramy. You know, how much money is out there just from having these people in the show, and it costs the Olympia very little just to fly them out there and put them up. They're going to get that back 100 times in pay-per-view sales from that fan base.
Well, I mean, pay-per-view or not, you want the greatest bodybuilders on stage. And like it or not, Big Ramy is one of the greatest bodybuilders of the last decade, 6 years. He won the 2013 New York Pro. That was kind of his coming out party. And he's been a top Olympian since. He's certainly had some ups and downs, but he's one of the best, and you want him there. Because, there's a lot of guys where, well, if he's at his best, he could win. Well, Ramy is really, if he's at the best, I mean, how could he possibly be beat? Small waist, huge legs, wide shoulders, tons of muscle.
And you have this new variable. Obviously, he keeps switching coaches. So every year there's, well, he's with a different coach. Maybe this guy will figure it out. Right. Yeah. And at a certain point, you're crying wolf all the time. Yeah. Certainly he's with somebody that has a history of nailing it, and Chad came out with after the Arnold saying, we did everything right. He just fell apart the day of the show. And I know why. I'm not going to put it out. It was a carb up thing. And saying, we'll get it right next time. And you're going to see the best Ramy ever. Now, obviously everybody's going to say that, you and I spoke the most conditioned Big Ramy that there's ever been has been with Aceto, and gone. And obviously the knock was, well, he lost some of his size. He's not 300 pounds on stage. Right. He doesn't have to be. Now the only knock is he just needs to be in condition. There's no separation. He probably needs to be 285, 290, just peeled out of his mind,
Yeah, I doubt even 290. I think he was something like, I mean, they're just, it's all lies. He was supposedly 315 at the Arnold. Well, if he was, he needs to be 25 pounds lighter.
Right.
Who knows? But he has all the tools. It's just, it's a mental game with him. From everything I've heard, when he was at Oxygen, they would have to send guys over to him to wake him up and have him do cardio. And he'd be like, no, I'm sleeping, And they'd have to literally try to drag him out of bed to get him to go, do cardio. Then he's supposed to be there at noon to train. And no, I come at 2:30. It's like, what dude, what are you doing here? Like, some people don't need their handheld and some people do. And I always say this, I've said it for years, that people's personality oftentimes resemble their physique. People who are really mellow and talk slow and really quiet, their physique is very mellow and, they don't get super shredded, People who are like spastic and can't sit still and, always doing something, those guys tend to have more of a lean physique, and Ramy is an example of someone that, he's the nicest guy on earth, but, nice guys finish last, he's getting by on purely genetics this far in his career. Yeah. If he wants to win the big one, he has to do something extraordinary and do something way different than he's ever done. Yeah. And take the bull by the horns. I don't think he needs a coach. I don't think he needs Chad. I mean, he hasn't learned from George, DJ, Chris, whoever the hell else he's had.
Right, the Kuwait guys.
Right. He should have learned by now what works for him. And, taking a little bit from each one. Well, this worked with him. This also worked. At some point, you got to take the reins and take the responsibility. Because thus far, he can just keep blaming the coach. Yep. Look what Chad did to me. Well, you're an adult. If you don't think what he's telling you to do is right, don't do it. I never take a coach's word as gospel. It's merely advice, and you guys work that out together, if you agree with it. You know, when you and I do stuff, it's never, Nate, you have to do this. It's like, what do you think of this? Let's try this. Let's you know, and we work it out. It's never.
You know, we've been working together now 2.5 years. And just in that process, man, I know my body well. You know, like, it's not like what you're saying is another language to me. And I'm just like, I don't get any of this, but I'll do it. You know, it's like, I understand exactly what you're doing and I'm trying to learn. You know, obviously my goal is to take all of this knowledge, understand the rhyme and reason for everything, and become a great coach myself. You know, so it's understanding why you're making a judgment call of why we're keeping food high but moving cardio up rather than pulling food down. All those variables, right? They all give a different look, you know, or have a different purpose in this whole thing. So based on somebody's metabolism, based on how many weeks out you are, obviously I can get lean really easy. But it's hard for me to shoot up weight. The more I eat, the more my metabolism speeds up, you know. I add more calories, I lose weight. So, you know, all of those variables. Other people have the opposite problem. They increase 500 calories, they go up 20 pounds, but they can't get shredded. So one thing I was going to bring up that it reminded me kind of just even on an amateur level of what competitors think are fair versus the show promoter making money was, if you remember, like a month and a half ago for the Universe, Steve Weinberger's show, they moved it to Jersey, from Jersey to South Carolina. And then they put out the release of, due to COVID and all these shows, the local level shows being canceled, you don't have to qualify for Universe. We're just accepting anybody. And so I saw that and I'm like, whatever. But man, did people have a fit online. I just saw post after post. You know, I busted my ass last year to do this show and to get a qualification, so I earned my spot. Now you're going to let anybody in. My thought process is yeah, you might have that dark horse, that, you know, that freak. They were going to come in and win a local show anyway. You know, if anybody's going to beat me not qualifying at a local show,
that's on you.
Yeah, that's it. You know, so if you're Steve, you know, obviously there's both sides. You know, I love studying business stuff, you know, but I'm also an athlete, a competitor in this stuff, and I understand the rules and the qualifications. But we don't have any of this unless promoters make money. You know, like none of this exists. And as you know, from knowing guys that have put on small shows trying to get this stuff going, they take a massive loss probably the first couple of years. You know, when you put one of these shows out, you're just throwing away money. You know, and it's only if you get to the level of what Steve's doing, what Jay's doing, say our local shows of New England's, the Cutler Classic, and maybe Steve's shows throughout New York. Steve's making some money on that for sure. But how many years did it take him to build it up? So it's, you know, Cutler or New England's in the Boston area are the two shows you do if you're a serious competitor, you know. And if you do those as a first show, you're going to get smoked. There's other shows that you do. And those other shows that you're doing, whether it's Powerhouse, the Montanari Brothers stuff, maybe they're making money, but they're not making a killing on those. You know, you have classes with 3 competitors in them versus if you go to Cutler, there might be 14, 15 middleweights. You know, so it was funny. It's sort of a similar comparison of just the athletes saying that's not fair. And also saying, well, I understand why Steve would do that. Obviously, he took it back. They did some weird, you know, we never intended to, you know, we put out, this statement was put out in error, and that's not what we meant to do, you know. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, we took it back. So now you have to be qualified.
Okay.
So they put that statement out there. The athletes got pissed. I'm surprised he just didn't stick with it, because are people not going to compete at Universe because of this rule change? I don't think it would change anything, you know.
Well, here's the thing. It's pretty easy to qualify.
Yeah.
There was this guy.
Is it top 2? Is that what it is for a local show?
I think so, yeah. There was this guy from New York, and someone did a story on him, referred to him as the clueless competitor. Now, the guy was clearly like slow or something. And every year he would show up at the Universe. He didn't shave. He had hair on him. He looked kind of like the Grinch, skinny arms and a big belly and clearly didn't train and just put tan on and did the poses. And, people are like, what the hell? Like, he showed up every year. And because of the rules, he qualified. And some people would get mad because he would do the over 55 or something at a local show. And there's only one guy there. It's him, so he qualified. So he'd show up to this prestigious national event in his messy, tan, with hairy chest and shoulders and no muscle. And people are like, what the hell? So, there's always going to be that situation. But as you said, the promoter's got to make their money. And this year it's crazier than any. I would let anyone, as long as you have an NPC card, you can come do it.
Yeah.
Help these people survive.
Yeah. Because you got to think, Steve's income as a show promoter is probably 25%, if that, of what it would normally be. Every little show's been canceled, right? And Steve has his hand in all of this stuff. He was going to be doing the Boston Pro, the Boston NPC, the Cutler in New England. All of those are canceled. Not to mention all of the New York, New Jersey shows he'd be doing. So, Steve's probably going to be okay. He's been doing this long enough. He's got his gym. But what about the guy in some other state that this is all he does for a living? And so does that guy, is he able to come back next year?
I don't think that guy exists.
Okay.
There's not that.
Steve's,
nobody's living off of show promotion, unless you've gotten to the point where you're Tim Gardner and you have multiple shows a year and they're making it big each one. But even Tim had a business to be able to back him to get to that point.
Right.
But there's small time promoters that I've seen through the years that get killed. You go to a show and on that weekend, they're paying me a good chunk of change to guest pose. And there's an ice storm in the middle of Wisconsin and nobody can get there. And, 18 mothers and fathers show up to watch the bikini girls. That's it. They don't make nothing, but they just shelled out to fly me in, put me up, feed me, and pay me. Sometimes there's another competitor there too. And renting the hall, paying for everything. They're banged up.
Yep.
And there's nobody going to step in and help them out for that one.
Right.
It happens. This year is the shits, 2020 should just be erased from the memory books of everything. And going back to Steve's gym was shut down.
Yeah.
Bev's was shut down. And they just reopened a few weeks ago and God knows if they're going to stay open.
Maybe half the year, right? Like they were shut down. I know Boston, we were shut down mid-March. I feel like New York was probably around that time too, if not even a little sooner. So March, April, May, June, July, August, did he open up maybe in September?
Yeah.
You still got to pay the landlord probably, unless you're able to negotiate something, and you can't bill members, so Steve's had a rough year, not that Steve needs sympathy from anybody, but you feel bad for somebody, Steve's contributing to the sport, by having all of these shows, by having this gym. And if Steve goes away tomorrow, it's a huge loss for the New England area, in that gym. So, there is a level of the business guy needs to make money. And Steve's been adding shows over the years too. Certainly if there's a financial incentive for him, he's going to add more. And there's a ton of show in a normal year between New York, New Jersey. Now they were supposed to do a main show this year, an NPC main show. There's a ton of shows for competitors. Well, it's always that way.
He's involved in way more than people know because he'll be a silent partner. You go to Vermont and then you see his entire crew is there expediting. If you see them there and Bev's there, and then you can bet he's not doing it as a favor.
Right.
That's his show. There's that. If the main show is happening, then that's going to be his show. If there's, if Shawn's there head judging in Connecticut, you can bet that is, he's monopolized all of them.
Oh yeah.
You know, in a good way, because the show runs smoothly. His crew is there to.
Those guys are awesome. You know, having
Yeah.
competed Connecticut Grand Prix, Cutler,
Right.
you know, as long as you give those guys respect and they don't always get it from, you know, some hangry competitors backstage,
Yeah.
they're the nicest guys ever. You know,
Yeah.
I've had great experiences with them. And man, is that a shit job, you know, because these things never run on time, but you have to have everybody ready. And guys are like, oh, I forgot my such and such. I got to go see my girlfriend in the front entrance. You know, meanwhile, they're going on in 10 minutes, you know.
Right.
And everybody, you know, this is a selfish sport, and you're never more selfish than the day of the show when your head is completely, you're bonkers at that point, you know. Even guys that are good at controlling stress, you get super stressed the day of the show. It all hits you. And so to have to be the wranglers of that and maintain order when you have, you know, 200 plus selfish athletes backstage is it's a pretty thankless job. And those guys, you know, Steve's crew does a really good job. So we have a couple more topics I want to hit before you got to go. Next one also came out with a video on Jay Cutler TV is Shawn Rhoden, was interviewed by Dave Borlée. And so I want to get your thoughts. Was a little unclear. Obviously, Shawn says he's not competing, which I think we all sort of assumed. But he seemed to imply that he could have competed, that it wasn't like in past years where he's ready to go, he's fighting to get in, and they say, no, we will not let you. He kind of implied he could, but he's choosing not to because he wants to have this stuff behind him first and give it 100%. So what are your thoughts on that? You know, it wasn't clear. He wasn't like, they gave me the go ahead and I said no. So he might be playing politics here and not wanting to shit on the IFBB, you know, and put the heat on them as has been in the past. But he kind of implied this is my choice. It might not have been, right? And he wants to just be the bigger man and take ownership of it. But what are your thoughts on how this is playing out?
Man, I didn't see the interview, but my guess is Shawn is at his wit's end. He's so frustrated. He's willing to play any game to put it behind him. And no, I don't believe for a second that he decided not to. It was his choice not to compete. Shawn's still strong, healthy. His body doesn't have any injuries. He very well could have come and won this again 2 years in a row. Man, do I feel for him. I'm sickened by it. You know, if there's no evidence, clearly there's no evidence because they would have fried his ass by now, right? You know, they have a weak, shitty, circumstantial case, and this guy has lost millions of dollars, people. Millions, not 1 million, but millions between sponsorships, earnings,
guest posings,
appearance fees, contracts. Jesus, who knows, you know? It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I hope he goes for the throat in this girl or you know, I hate to say it because God only knows the truth, but if it's found that he was played, then he should go for broke and not only her, you know, to the people who didn't defend him. This is a really fine line that everyone had to walk. You know, was he innocent until proven guilty? Clearly not. You know, he wasn't able to make a living. He wasn't able to do his job, what he does, because people were too afraid that their business would be affected negatively by having him there. It's just so wrong in so many ways. I'm disgusted. I'm so happy that Jay has been by his side this whole way. And said the same thing. You know, if he's guilty, we'll find out. In the meantime, I'm not gonna shun a friend, someone that I believe in, for something we have no evidence of.
That's the really strange part. It is when this news broke 2 years ago now, right? Or when was it? So it supposedly happened after the Olympia he won, which was 18.
Yeah,
I want to say October, right? Was when
exactly. It was
incident.
probably right around now, right today.
And when did the charges come out? Was it like 6 months later or something like that?
Well, we found out about it 6 months later, but there was
talk. They were going back and forth. He knew, yeah.
The police were involved immediately.
Yes. So she went to the police, I think, that same day. But 6 months later, he's I don't know what the term is, indicted, right? Like they actually filed charges against him, right? He has to go to the police station, or a lawyer has to go on his behalf and accept the charges and now go through the due process. And so right when that leaked out, we were all shocked. And information leaked out we got a gist of what the story was. Now, I don't know if that's the full story, but you heard the gist of, Shawn went to meet up with this girl for whatever the reason was, whether it was a business transaction or whether there was a past history of them romantically. But, he comes to the hotel, he's in the lobby, she invites him up to the room. He's got a buddy with him, right? And then the buddy stays down, or maybe she has a buddy.
She had a friend with her, a photographer.
Oh, so
she
she
just
went to
come
his
from
hotel,
like a
right?
photo shoot or something.
I think she went to his hotel. So he was in his room. She's down in the lobby. She comes up. The buddy stays down in the lobby. Something happens, whether it's consensual or not, that'll be decided in court. She eventually goes to the cops. But I think it's like 6 months before they actually charge him, right? And within a week, we hear now the story. Like enough of it leaks out of what I just said, right? Goes to the hotel, something happened. And then it's been locked up. Like what I'm surprised about is, man, people talk, of whether someone who Shawn considered a friend and Shawn opened up about it. I'm amazed that hasn't leaked, or vice versa on her end. We know nothing more than what we learned that first week. And then, I don't know the normal time period for this. I would assume for, I guess what would be considered a violent sexual offense that he's charged with, the process would be pretty fast, right? This isn't a civil court thing. If I'm suing you for a business deal, these things drag out. Typically, when it's a violent offender, you're within a reasonable period of time to get them in and start the process of, right? Now, both sides can delay, both lawyers. Clearly, COVID must have something to do with it. But what's strange is there's been no word on any dates, not on an evidence hearing, not on, you know what I mean? All of the processes that would come before a trial, maybe they've gone on and we haven't heard, but I feel like we would know. That stuff kind of becomes public record to some extent, So that's the really bizarre thing in this is we're 2 years since the incident, and we have no idea when this trial is going to happen at all. It's just been locked up since we first heard that he,
if at all,
with the charges. Yep.
This thing could be dropped. It's so weak. The evidence is so weak that it might just be taking this long to get it dismissed.
Yeah.
There's not enough evidence, You would think if there was enough evidence, like you said, that's a violent crime. Why wasn't he in jail and have to post bail? And why didn't he spend some time in jail?
Right.
They can just say, I'll send my lawyer there to deal with it.
You would assume that there would at least be, you're in jail and you have to bail yourself out. And we would hear about what the bail amount is, right? Like Shawn Rhoden was put in jail and was released on $75,000 bail, whatever, right? Like that none of that was put out there. He just went to the station, or a lawyer went on his behalf, accepted the charges and said, okay, I'll go through the due process. That was it, which is a little bizarre.
Very bizarre. The whole thing's bizarre. And I hope it's resolved soon, quickly, so he can move on with his life. He's already lost most of his life. Yeah. I hope there's some recourse for him. He's lost so much of his life, so much valuable time, earnings. You can't earn money. You're an accused rapist. Get out of here. Like, his life is irreparably damaged, and I don't know how he's going to get out of this, and something has to happen. Something has to happen in the system to salvage these things. All right, you can make it.
So here's the thing: is like the system, you know, in terms of the legal system, is playing out as it should. The problem is it's the court of public opinion, and businesses being scared of pushback. Like the Shawn thing happened at a really bad time because we had, you know, known as the Me Too movement, right? Where you had some despicable people, Harvey Weinstein, you know, that absolutely deserved to be in prison. And then it had this sort of trickle down effect where, you know, Louis C.K., who's a comedian I particularly really like, completely lost his career, right? And essentially he was just jerking it while he was talking to people on the phone.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And so no charges put against him, right? So there's no criminal conduct where he was charged with a crime. He's completely lost his career. So, you know, even the criminal system worked out. They're like, we can't charge him. Just hang up the phone, right? You know, like that's all you got to do. Now, is what he did wrong? Yes, right? Is it criminal? According to the law, no. And so, but he has completely lost his career. He lost his HBO show, all these stand-ups that were about to come out. He can't tour. If he shows up into a local comedy club to try a set, he's gonna get heckled, berated, but below your deck. Yeah, or there were people that sat through the set and then went to like the local newspaper and they're like, I'm traumatized by having to sit there through this, you know, I don't even know. I guess, you know, they'd call him a sex offender, but I'm traumatized that I had to sit there and listen to his jokes. It's like, no, just walk out. You know, the guy's not even a convicted felon, you know? So that's the era. That's what hurt Shawn, right? Not the court. The court system is taking a long time, but it was the Olympia under AMI, under David Pecker, that said, we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole. You know, we have too much to lose, not enough to gain. I'd be curious to see, you know, if somebody interviewed Jake Wood to put him on the spot and say, would you have allowed, right? Because it's a combination of Mannion in the league allowing him to compete and the promoter. If Jake Wood goes to Mannion and says, I want this guy in my show, I'm willing to take the heat and take the risk, I think they let him. I think so too. You know? And I think he would. I just think it's so far past it at this point. Yeah. One last topic before we go. Our favorite person, I know your favorite person, Shawn Ray, who's commentated the Chicago Pro. But it's no secret when Shawn Ray commentates these shows, he's an asshole. He shits on everybody's physique. He talks about himself. But I think, you know, what was new to me, and you can correct me if this has been a longstanding thing, is at the Chicago Pro, he didn't know any of the athletes. He didn't know how to pronounce their names. He didn't know if they had won any shows, what shows they had won. There was no commentary of, here's a first call out. Here's why this guy is winning this pose or going to win this show because of X, Y, and Z. Half the time he was wrong. At one point he said Max is going to win. You know, Max wasn't on stage. Right. And so it was such a mess of butchering people's names, of not even knowing who these people are. Obviously, our local guy, Abner Logan, Big Ab, it was laughable, right? Abner comes out wearing the official Classic Physique trunks, and Shawn, the first thing he says, he steps out on stage and says, this guy's not even wearing the trunks, he's wearing bodybuilding trunks. Well, they clearly weren't bodybuilding trunks, right? They've changed the Classic Physique trunks in the last year or so, which Shawn clearly wasn't aware of. And then proceeds to tell this guy what's Abner, 6'1"? 6'2", 240 pounds. Yeah, and sucked down. Like his weight, he has to make 240, right? So maybe he might even be a little more on stage. We saw him, he was 252 4 days out. Right. And so Shawn proceeds to tell the listeners that, one, he's not classic. He's just hitting bodybuilding poses, which are the classic mandatories, and that he should, he looks like a bodybuilder and he should go and compete in the 212. Yeah. It was just such stupidity. You could have taken somebody from the audience and they would have had more insightful commentary than Shawn. So, I guess my question to you is, what are your thoughts of him at the Chicago Pro? Because, you listen to some of it. And who the hell continues to hire this guy? How is he the authority? Is he the authority because he said he's the authority? And clearly he's probably one of my top 5 favorite bodybuilders of all time. He has one of the best physiques ever, right? But outside of that, outside of me looking at pictures of him, he's worthless. He's doing nothing for the sport nowadays. He's just he should be in the Hall of Fame for one of the best physiques ever. But since he retired, he's doing nothing for the sport other than shitting on it. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I agree with a lot of it. He was absolutely one of my all-time favorite physiques. And that is why he's in the position he's in, because he is a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest. On top of it, he's very well spoken. He doesn't speak ebonics type of, not that that's good or bad. It's just for production value. You want a very well spoken guy like himself. He is educated. Shawn's a bright guy. But I think he's his own worst enemy, where I think he was purposely butchering names. And it's a weird thing to me because he can't get over himself, that he's so in love with himself that he's got to remind you and everyone else and himself what peasants today's bodybuilders are. That Akim, Akima, Kiani, all these people's names, Ian Valari, all these people's names, because Shawn is so above them that he can't possibly have the time or consideration to know their names, which is so ignorant. And he always, whenever people call him out and say, Shawn, what do you, he's like, well, I'm just a journalist. Well, you know what? A journalist does research. They see who the competitor is. They see how to pronounce their name. They see what shows they've won. They give a little color commentary. That's another term he's used in the past. Like, I'm just bringing a little color to it. When I was on the Olympia stage at one point, he mentioned me having a failing marriage. What the fuck does that have to do with my legs or my physique or anything? Jose's not taking it seriously anymore. I was still 3rd that year at the Olympia. I think I took it serious enough. So he talks about things that aren't necessary. When you see a guy, sometimes I guess if you're looking at a monitor, he can't tell that Abner's 6'2", 240. And he just said, maybe this guy should do 212. Also, he kept bringing up the fact of the posing. He's not doing any classic poses. Listen, there is nowhere written in a handbook that says we're going to judge you strictly on your performance of these particular classic poses. No, they say hit a front double bicep, hit a side chest, hit a rear double bicep, hit an ab and thigh. Now hit a classic pose. They didn't say hit a front double bicep with your hip twisted and your arm up higher. Well,
you know what's funny to add on that? So Shawn expanded later. I bought the pay-per-view. I listened to the whole thing, and so you had this poor woman. What's her name? That was doing the commentary.
Isabel Terrell.
This poor woman to have to sit next to him and just hear that shit. I could mute it on my phone. She couldn't mute him, and she's trying to her commentary was very positive, but even he swung her into let's just shit on people.
Yeah.
It's really, when you're around a complainer like that, you just start complaining too. So his solution, because at one point she was like, well, Shawn, if those poses aren't working, what would you do? So she was kind of sticking him a little bit. And he's like, they really need to bring the art back. So what I would do is just say, hit your favorite front pose, hit your favorite side pose, hit your favorite back pose, let them do whatever they want, and you judge that. That was his solution. And you as a judge, how do you judge that? Right? Somebody hits a side chest, well, somebody hits a side tricep, well, somebody does an Arnold twisting thing. You can't compare apples to apples on this stuff. End of the day, like you always say, it's still bodybuilding. There's a weight limit on it, and you might be rewarding shape. Certainly in bodybuilding, you're still rewarding shape, right? But in classic, it's the more that you have that smaller waist and you V out, you're going to do better. Some guy can win a bodybuilding show and be a refrigerator, but if he's shredded and has the most muscle, you can still kind of squeak in, you know?
I know all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Shawn, someone should have a talk with him. I don't know what they're paying him to do these jobs, but this was actually the worst because of the pandemic. Less people were at the show, more people were watching it. He's been doing this shit for years, whether it be shitting on. I remember one year he's brought up Akeem's gyno. He's like, oh, he's got really bad gyno. Now, for the common viewer, they don't need to know about gyno. They don't need to know about all his. You can say, his upper body's weaker than his lower body. He could use some more pec. He could use some more detail in the back. You don't get into like it just wasn't necessary.
In
Pointing
this
out,
show, he was, when it came down to Justin and Akeem, he made it a point to say, Justin's shoulders are looking very suspect. I'm looking at his physique, and those shoulders are very suspect. You know, I think there's some enhancement going on. No, might be, but it's again, it comes down to that. You know, look, the way I would put it, you know, I
I'd
mean,
be pissed if I was Justin and they weren't.
right?
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not so against that. Like, if someone has clear synthol arms, you know, last year he had no arms, now he has 23-inch arms, then I would probably bring it up too. But there's a way to go about it. And Shawn doesn't have any bedside manner, doesn't have any couth, and there's good reason for people wanting to smack him.
So there's, you know, I think the blueprint for this is UFC, right? I'm a huge UFC fan, and it's comparable in that it's a really niche sport that the average viewer doesn't know what they're watching, right? And UFC is fun. People want to see people get knocked out, right? So the average viewer is turning in to see somebody get kicked in the face, to see them get, you know, pummeled, to get choked out. But there's a lot of intricate stuff going on, especially when it comes to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stuff, right? Or even wrestling. Like, you have a wrestling background. I know nothing about wrestling other than what I've learned from UFC. So UFC either has a 2-man team or a 3-man team. And you've got the play-by-play, I mean, it's like sports, right? You've got the play-by-play guy that's just real time saying what's going on. And then you have the Joe Rogan position, which is explaining what's going on, right? See, right here, the guy's in side control. He's going for a Kimura. He's going, you know, they're telling you as what they're trying and explaining what it is. They might have a choke in and saying, look, it's not under the chin. What he has to do is turn away from the guy to get out, you know, that type of thing. So as a fan who started watching it, who knew nothing about this, I now know so much more watching this sport for the last 15 years, right? Which is how it should be. And now I'm even more hooked, because now the more that I understand it, just like bodybuilding, the more that you understand it, the more you love it. That's what they need. You know, like, somebody needs to put together a team, whether it's, you know, you and I, a Fuad and an Ian, or whoever, right? And that says, we're the team for hire. And what you get is, you know, you fly us out, you pay us X amount, and we will research the shit out of every competitor, right? So say it's a hypothetical you and I. I'm going to be the research guy. I'm going to have my notes on every competitor there of what show that they've won, where their placings are. And you're the color commentator, because you got the eyes to explain why these guys made first callouts, why this guy just got moved to the center, who's winning each pose. Because it's a game of, you know, what do you have? 7 poses. You know, this guy won because he won 4 of them. He got smoked in the back shots, but he won the other 4. So that, you know, and as you educate the people, because that's the problem with the sport is, you know, you have a Nick Strength and Power. He doesn't know what he's looking at. You know, he puts out entertaining content, but he doesn't know what he's looking at for this stuff in terms of judging. You know, it'd be amazing if they could have somebody that's a well-spoken judge commentating as one of the people, right? And maybe you have the bigger name. But it's just that's clearly going to be the future now is, if the Olympia can pull off a high quality stream, which has just never been done in this sport. When I mean high quality, not only like cameras perfectly zoomed in, so it's boxed in and you see all the guys, but good commentary, good flow to the whole thing. Everything's been incredibly low budget. If they can pull off a good stream, we'll now start to buy more of these. I'm hesitant to spend $45 in the Chicago Pro because I know it's going to be shit, because it's always been shit,
Right.
So if the Olympia can put together a UFC type stream where you've got reels, top 5 coming out, and we've already done interviews with these guys, and here's a clip of Phil talking for 2 minutes about his comeback, and now we're going to go to Bonac talking, and
what's funny, Nate, is 25 years ago they had that.
Really?
In that production value. Lou Zwick used to put it together. You'd have, a video of Dennis Newman in a box in the corner as he's doing his posing routine, and him talking about, his prep and leading up to the show, and huge production value. They used to have the Muscle Mania on ESPN, and it was incredible. And now 25, 30 years later, we have this, maybe they should call Lou Zwick and have him produce the Olympia.
End of the day, there's money they're leaving out there, right? Like if you're Steve Weinberger, even going in next year, you have the New York Pro, say for some reason things are back to normal, they can pack that auditorium, every seat sold. There's still, at least 100,000 people that would want to watch this thing around the world.
Right.
Maybe Big Ramy decides to do the New York Pro next year. Evan makes his comeback at the New York Pro, right? There's enough little stories going on that it's entertaining enough, but you got to step up the quality. But man, will you get that in return? If you're selling $29 pay-per-views or whatever. So, my hope is that ultimately, what we saw when things shut down is, I think it was Tampa, right? The Tampa Pro was the first one to do the streaming thing and to charge for it. Obviously, we've had free streams for the Arnold, for the Olympia. So Tampa Pro does it. I forget what they charge, is $20 or something. And it was kind of shit. It was okay. We were just happy to see a show. And then Steve jumped on for the New York Pro, right? Like they proved he made money. So Steve's like, okay, you can make some money off this. I'm going to get in on it, but we're going to do it as cheap as possible because I got to make money.
Right.
Somebody's got to realize, you have to earn the trust of the fan back.
Right.
And then we'll be willing. Look, I pay, what's a UFC pay-per-view? $65?
Yeah.
I'm
all day long.
Buying every single one, right? Because I know the quality's there. So I'll pay $40 for the Olympia stream. If the quality's going to be good, I'll pay that every year. Certainly cheaper than flying out there, So hopefully somebody realizes, and hopefully it's Jake Wood, that will put the money into it ahead of time, get the return, and set the example for the Steve Weinbergers out there that might be too hesitant to spend money to make money.
Right. I think it's going to happen. It has to, because they can't survive with 15 people in the audience.
Yeah.
They got to get it to the masses and get it in a quality fashion. But that's all the time I got today, brother. I'm going to head to work and move on with my day, maybe shave this gorgeous beard, and we'll get back. We have a lot of exciting things coming up. The one guy we were supposed to go with yesterday had to fly out, and we'll get him on, Chris Cormier. So if anyone sees this before we film with him, get some questions in. What do you want to know about Chris?
Yeah, comment in the comment section of this video. We'll ask him.
Yeah, let us know what you think about Shawn Ray too.
And then also, I guess while we're there, those comments I won't erase. You can make it as nasty as possible. I'll leave those up. I usually erase the other ones. And then what else other people want to see? Obviously, we've been filming workouts on a regular basis. I'm now, as of today, 7 weeks out from Masters USA's. You're looking crazy. Obviously, we can talk about that. Everybody wants to know if there's going to be a comeback. We'll save that for another day. But any videos you guys want to see, whether it's training videos, give us the ideas and we'll make it happen, or any other podcast guests you want to see.
Yeah, we have one coming out that we filmed Sunday night of a bear wrestling match. Me and Nate didn't shave our chests. We oiled up and we wrestled. So that one will be coming out soon.
Yeah, we're trying to get some new viewers here.
All right.
Okay.
Good enough. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.